Namaskar. Prime Minister Narendra Modi concluded a productive visit to Bangladesh. Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla described the visit as historic, rich in substance and deeply meaningful in historic symbolism. The visit focused on the spirit and legacy of 1971 and looked at new areas of cooperation with a focus on the youth. So that's going to be our focus tonight. We'll also be discussing the bloody crackdown on protesters in Myanmar on a day in which at least 90 protesters were killed by the armed forces there. But let's begin with the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds bilateral talks with his Bangladeshi counterpart Sheikh Hasina. The leaders review progress of cooperation in areas of health, connectivity, energy, trade. India and Bangladesh signed 5 MoUs covering a number of areas of bilateral cooperation. India hands over 109 life support ambulances and 1.2 million corona vaccine doses to Bangladesh. Also announces a new train, Maitri Express, between Dhaka and New Jalpaiguri. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visits Hari Mandir of the Matua community at Orakondi and offers prayers and says that India is moving forward with the mantra of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. Also announces India's decision to upgrade one middle school and set up a primary school in Orakondi. Prime Minister also visits the Jeshoreshwari Kali temple in Ishwaripur to seek blessings of Ma Kali. Announces a grant for the construction of a community hall cum cyclone shelter attached to the temple. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visits the mausoleum of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman at Tungipara and signs the visitors' book at the mausoleum complex and plants a sapling at its premises. Bangladesh, his counterpart in Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, who's the daughter of Mujibur Rahman, was also present. Voting held for the first phase of assembly polling for 30 assembly seats in West Bengal and 47 seats in Assam. Barring sporadic violence, polling was held peacefully. A huge voter turnout was recorded in the first phase. The Union Health Secretary chairs a high-level meeting with 12 states and union territories reporting a surge in cases of coronavirus. States and union territories are advised to focus on stringent containment and public health measures in 46 high-burden districts. Some states continue to exhibit a spike in daily cases. Total vaccination coverage now crosses 5.8 crores. The DD free dish crosses another milestone. The user base has crossed 40 million subscribers. Prasar Bharati CEO Shashi Shekhar Vempati is delighted to share the news on Twitter. In international news, more than 90 protesters killed in Myanmar crackdown by security forces. The European Union delegation to Myanmar says that 76 Myanmar Armed Forces Day will stay engraved as a day of terror and dishonor. The leader of the ruling junta addresses the Army Day parade and says that the military would protect the people and strive for democracy. And in sports, Vijay Veer Sidhu and Tejaswani win the gold in the 25-meter rapid-fire mixed event, pistol event. They comfortably beat the pair of Gurpreet Singh and Ashok Ahidnya Patil 9-1 at the ISSF World Cup in Delhi. Our top story. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds bilateral talks with his Bangladeshi counterpart Sheikh Hasina. The leaders reviewed progress of cooperation in areas of health, connectivity, energy and trade. And India and Bangladesh had signed 5 MoUs which cover a number of areas of bilateral cooperation. India also handed over 109 life support ambulances and 1.2 million coronavirus vaccine doses to Bangladesh. Here's our report.
The bonhomie seen between the Prime Ministers of India and Bangladesh during their bilateral talks testify the fact that the relationship is going from strength to strength, with India being witness to the grand celebration of 50 years of Bangladesh's independence a glorious new chapter in the Indo-Bangladesh bilateral relationship was scripted. Both PM Narendra Modi and Bangladesh PM Sheikh Hasina discussed the progress achieved in sectors of health, trade, connectivity, energy, developmental cooperation, among others.
The two Prime Ministers to take stock of progress in various areas, different diverse areas in which we cooperate. This included, some discussions on how we could preserve the legacy and spirit of 1971, commerce and connectivity, cooperation in water resources, security, defense, power and energy, and new areas like artificial intelligence, environment.
After the delegation-level talks, 5 MoUs were exchanged between India and Bangladesh. These include cooperation in disaster management, cooperation among the cadet corps of both countries, cooperation in information and communication technology, trade remedial measures, as well as setting up sporting facilities in Rajshahi. After the talks, both the leaders jointly inaugurated several projects. Prominent among them was the start of the Mitali Express train, which will run between New Jalpaiguri and Dhaka.
We've also agreed to start a new passenger train service, which is called Mitali Express, between New Jalpaiguri and Dhaka, starting from Dhaka cantonment. Significant decisions were also taken during this special year, like the establishment of the Bangabandhu Chair in Delhi University.
Apart from this, 3 border hearths were inaugurated at key points along the Indo-Bangladesh border in Meghalaya and Sylhet-Sunamganj on Bangladesh side. The historic road that links Mujibnagar and Nodia district of West Bengal is being relaid and has been renamed as Shadhinota Sorok. Furthering cooperation in power and energy sectors, both the leaders jointly laid the foundation stones for infrastructure development for power evacuation facilities of the Ropur nuclear power plant.
The Prime Ministers laid the foundation stone for 5 packages of the Ropur power evacuation project, which is an important component of the line of credit, the 3rd line of credit that India has extended to Bangladesh. There are a total of 8 packages, and 5 packages have been now for which foundation stone has been laid. And this transmission line costs over $1 billion.
Not only this, India has been a trusted partner for Bangladesh in their fight against COVID-19. A gift of 1.2 million doses of made-in-India COVID vaccines were handed over by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Apart from this, India has also given 109 life support ambulances to Bangladesh. India-Bangladesh friendship stamps were released to commemorate the 50th anniversary of establishment of bilateral diplomatic relations. On the occasion of Mujib Borsho, Bangladesh released gold and silver coins. On the completion of 50 years of diplomatic ties, India also released a silver coin. Later, PM Narendra Modi met Bangladesh President Abdul Hamid and discussed several key issues. The strong bond between India and Bangladesh is illustrated by the fact that the Prime Minister's 2-day visit to Bangladesh was his first overseas visit since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. With Arun in Dhaka, Bureau Report, DD India.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi once again remembered Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman as he visited his ancestral home in Tungipara. The Prime Minister laid a wreath at the mausoleum complex, and he described Bangabandhu's journey. He said it epitomized the freedom struggle of the people of Bangladesh for their rights.
बंगबंधु शेख मुजीबुर रहमान जी ने कहा था, बांग्लादेश इतिहास से स्वाधीन राष्ट्र हिसेबे टिके थाकबे, बांग्ला के दाबिए राखते पारे एमन कोनो शक्ति नहीं, बांग्लादेश स्वाधीन होकर रहेगा। किसी में इतनी शक्ति नहीं है कि बांग्लादेश को दबा करके रख सके।
बांग्लादेश ठेकाई के बाद साधु का
The aura of Bangabandhu and his love for the motherland inspired millions of patriots. He single-handedly led the way forward for a free Bangladesh. On the occasion of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's birth centenary year celebrations, Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to Tungipada, Bangabandhu's ancestral village. Laying a wreath at the mausoleum complex, the Prime Minister paid his tributes to the father of Bangladesh. A prayer was read for peace and prosperity of the region.
আল্লাহ দেশ পরিচালনায় মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী যে অক্লান্ত পরিশ্রম করছেন তাকে আপনি অসীম সাহস সামর্থ্য সুস্বাস্থ্য দীর্ঘায়ু এবং সহায়তা দান করুন
The Prime Minister hailed the vision of Bangabandhu.
मैं जातिर पिता बंगबंधु शेख मुजीबुर रहमान की समाधि सौधों पर गया, वहां श्रद्धा सुमन अर्पित किए। शेख मुजीबुर रहमान जी का नेतृत्व, उनका विजन और बांग्लादेश के लोगों पर उनका विश्वास एक मिसाल है।
This is for the first time that any foreign leader has visited the ancestral home of Bangabandhu in Tungipada. The Prime Minister also planted a sapling at the mausoleum site of Bangabandhu. Penning his views in the visitor's book, the Prime Minister wrote, "The life of Bangabandhu epitomized the freedom struggle of the people of Bangladesh for their rights, for the preservation of their inclusive culture and their identity." Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her younger sister Sheikh Rehana accompanied the Prime Minister as he paid respects at the mazar of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The pioneering efforts of human rights champion Sheikh Mujibur Rahman laid the foundation of non-violence, peace, cooperation and progress of the country. In Prime Minister's words,
किसी में इतनी शक्ति नहीं है कि बांग्लादेश को दबा करके रख सके। बंगबंधु का ये उद्घोष बांग्लादेश के अस्तित्व का विरोध करने वालों को चेतावनी भी थी और बांग्लादेश के सामर्थ्य पर विश्वास भी था।
with Neeraj Singh in Tungipada, Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, that brings us to In Focus tonight, and our first point of In Focus, which we are discussing today in Focus, is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bangladesh visit, historic, meaningful, substantive. And joining us to discuss this, we have with us Dr. Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat, and Ramesh Ramachandran is our correspondent who is joining us from Dhaka. Ramesh, let me start with you because you were there, you saw all the action, and the Foreign Secretary described this as a historic visit, rich in substance, deeply meaningful and historic symbolism. What would you think were the key focus points, briefly, of this visit?
Indeed, Mark, a quick update. A joint statement has just been released towards the end of PM Modi's two-day visit to Bangladesh. Coming to the question you asked me, Mark, if I can borrow the phrase used by Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla, it's a new energy, new pathway. That's how he summed up the two-day visit of the PM to Bangladesh. He also described it as transcending even a strategic partnership. Now, in those crucial talks, the two sides discussed as diverse an issue as commerce, connectivity, water, defense and security, artificial intelligence, environment, nuclear energy, space cooperation, the entire gamut of bilateral ties, regional and other issues as well. And the two leaders also laid the foundation stone of a martyr's memorial for the Indians who died in the 71 Liberation War, and also inaugurated 5 packages of transmission lines from the Rupur power plant. Besides, of course, India donating 109 ambulances, including some for the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh, and also PM Modi personally gifting 1.2 million vaccines to his Bangladeshi counterpart, PM Sheikh Hasina, in addition to the 10-odd million vaccines, the latest tranche of vaccines to Bangladesh. All in all, high on symbolism, high on substance, and PM has just emplaned for New Delhi, Mark.
Right. Thanks for that update, Ramesh. But let me bring in Ambassador Mohan Kumar. There seems to be a focus on youth, would you say, Ambassador Mohan Kumar? Because if you look at this, there are 1,000 scholarships for the youth. 50 young entrepreneurs were invited to meet VCs in India. There was an agreement between the NCCs for the two countries. There's also focus on sports. And then when the Prime Minister talked about new areas of cooperation, artificial intelligence, areas which are basically things that the next generation would be interested in. So, what would you see? Would you see us moving in that direction?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. Both India and Bangladesh are young countries, Bangladesh particularly. And it makes sense that you try to connect the youth of both countries. Bangladeshis are known to be extremely enterprising and hardworking. They take to technology very easily, just like Indians, and therefore it makes sense to cooperate in those areas. But I just wanted to take off from where Ramesh Ramachandran left, which is that just both symbolism and substance. I think this relationship is turning out to be a game changer, frankly. The kind of connectivity in energy, trade, road, rail, water transit that we are talking about is something that should have happened, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, because South Asia remains the least integrated region, economically speaking. And what India and Bangladesh are doing in terms of the PM's visit now, but also what we've been doing for the last 1 or 2 years, is to try to make this a model relationship so that other neighbors of India can take note that this is what can be done with South Asia, which still houses the largest number of people in poverty. We have got energy poverty, we've got economic poverty, and I think Bangladesh has done extremely well economically speaking. We should appreciate that. And I think this relationship, frankly, is turning out to be a model relationship, and some of the agreements that have been signed can really turn out to be game changers.
Ramesh, so game-changing agreements, when we look at the focus, especially with economic integration in that region, there are building blocks really in a place that are being put in place, but there are still issues that need to be sorted out for it to really have that that connectivity that is required for that kind of integration to take place. What did the Foreign Secretary say as far as the connectivity is concerned? How much closer are we to more agreements on motor vehicles, for instance, and on other projects?
First of all, Mark, our viewers need to understand the Bangladesh of 2021 is vastly different from Bangladesh of 2 decades or older. This is a new Bangladesh. It's a more self-assured, self-confident Bangladesh. It has a youth pulse, just as India. And both leaders, PM Modi and PM Sheikh Hasina, have indicated in no uncertain terms that they intend to tap into, harness the youth pulse, the demographic dividend for the benefit of their countries. And Foreign Secretary himself mentioned in his press briefing just a short while ago that commerce and connectivity go hand in hand. Now, from Dhaka's perspective, Mark, Bangladesh, having graduated from an LDC country status to a developing economy, to a middle-income country, wants greater access to the Indian market, and not just that, also access through India to other markets, namely Bhutan and Nepal. So commerce and connectivity are interlinked, and to that extent, Foreign Secretary said that talks are on. India is more than amenable to allow Bangladesh access to countries beyond India as well. From Bangladesh perspective, the trade, non-tariff barriers are an issue, but they are not insurmountable. And may I just quickly add that if we look into the past, if both countries could easily and peacefully resolve the contentious land and maritime boundary issues, Mark, there is no reason why any of these issues could not be resolved either.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if the countries have put a lot of differences beside and put them aside and move forward and sorted them out, then there's no reason why the economic issues cannot be sorted out. Ambassador Mohan Kumar, if we look at you know, some of the people-to-people connections, there is this new train now, the Mithali Express. How significant is the people-to-people connection between the two countries, and how far can it be harnessed to strengthen this relationship all round?
I think the people-to-people connectivity is what is going to turn out to be a game changer, frankly. There is a stereotyped impression in India that the Bangladeshis are illegal immigrants, and I think we will have to get rid of that notion, frankly. Bangladeshis are now worldwide global migrants. They will migrate everywhere, but more than anything else, they are a very dynamic migratory race. And so not just economic migrants, but also the kind of cultural interaction that can happen between the two countries, especially West Bengal and Bangladesh. There is a lot of affinity there. But I think the kind of connectivity that is being talked about, we've got the bridge across the Feni River,
yes,
goods and passengers from Tripura to Bangladesh, the railways, high-speed passenger train that is being contemplated from Delhi and Dhaka, the multi-modal road rail link between Agartala and Akhaura, the Padma Bridge, which is fast-track completion, which will help connectivity from Bangladesh to India. So this will move not just goods, but also passengers. And what I want to say is that Bangladesh is absolutely justified in asking for access to the Indian market. Ramesh mentioned that a little while ago. I just wanted to say that the trade is worth $10 billion. It's a little one-sided. So Bangladesh is absolutely justified in asking for access. I would go one step further, and I think we should try and conclude a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. But as far as youth is concerned, education can be a primary area where actually students from Bangladesh, instead of going off to other places in the world, they can come to India, get into some of our best institutions, study, and that is the kind of people-to-people ties that I would like to see. Education, culture, science, technology. There is a MoU that has been signed between Prime Minister Modi and Sheikh Hasina on ICT, and that is the right thing to do. The Bangladeshi engineers are very good, and they distinguish themselves abroad. No reason why Bangladeshi youth cannot be trained in STEM and non-STEM subjects in India.
Right, indeed. Ramesh, also there was, you know, in the restricted conversations between the two principals, the talk was also about defense, different areas. I mean, there was nuclear, of course, with there is cooperation there, but there's definitely a new focus with regard to artificial intelligence was one of the issues raised. There were some other issues. The Foreign Secretary was talking about new power. He kept talking about new power, new energy, new direction, new movement. So, I mean, can you focus a little bit about that? I mean, what is the new energy and the new movement?
Indeed, just to start on the point of defense and security, Mark, Foreign Secretary Shringla describing it as quote-unquote excellent cooperation. He went on to say that both sides discussed it at some length in the restricted and delegation level talks. Just to give our viewers a sense of where both countries are coming from.
Yes, go ahead, Ramesh, I can hear you.
Right, so just to give our viewers a sense of where the two countries are coming from, Bangladesh, location-wise, in terms of its geographic location, shares almost 90% of its land boundary with India, extending over 4,000 odd kilometers. From that perspective, Bangladesh is key to connectivity to India's northeast and beyond. So by geographical location, it straddles the subcontinent and the Southeast Asian economies. So it is a key pillar of India's neighborhood first policy and Act East policy as well. And to that extent, excuse me, we saw in the last 12 odd years since Hasina came to power in 2008-9, we've seen her ramp up cooperation on defense and security. insurgents operating in this northeast used to get a safe haven in Bangladesh. That is no longer the case. Things have improved, and Dhaka has given New Delhi satisfaction on many accounts in this regard. Talking about border management,
yes.
Mark, it is of prime concern to both countries, and talks have been held on a number of occasions at multiple levels. And again, these are outstanding issues, no doubt, but they are not insurmountable and can be resolved going forward as well. Talking about power and energy sector, Mark, just to give you a sample of the MOU sign, the agreement signed between two countries, that there will be, India and Bangladesh cooperating on the Rupur power plant. And under the line of credit for Bangladesh, India will set up the transmission lines worth over $1 billion.
Ramesh, I'm told that we need to run a few stories, and then we'll come back to both of you for some reactions, because we need to talk about the entire visit. So let's tell you about the next the next story that we are going to share with you. This is the story about the Prime Minister. How he remembered, he sought the blessings, in fact, of Ma Kali at the Jeshoreshwari Kali temple in Ishwaripur in Shaktkira. This is in Bangladesh, and of course he prayed to Goddess Kali to end the COVID pandemic. He also announced a grant for the construction of community hall cum cyclone shelter attached to the temple. Let's listen to this voiceover.
A traditional start to day 2 of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bangladesh visit at the Jeshoreshwari Kali temple. It is amongst the 6 out of 51 Shakti Peeths in Bangladesh that hold great religious value for pilgrims. After a traditional welcome at the temple gates, PM Modi offered a handmade mukut to Ma Kali. The mukut or crown, made of silver with gold plating, was made over 3 weeks by a traditional artisan. Prime Minister also offered prayers inside the sanctum sanctorum.
माँ काली का वरदहस्त आज मानव जात जिस कोरोना के कारण अनेक संकटों से गुजर रही है, माँ से यही प्रार्थना है कि पूरी मानव जात को इस कोरोना के संकट से जल्द मुक्ति दिलाएं। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः जिस मंत्र को हमने जिया है, वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम, जो हमारे संस्कार की विरासत है, हम पूरी मानव जात के कल्याण के लिए प्रार्थना करते हैं।
Extending a hand of friendship, Prime Minister announced a grant for construction of a community hall cum cyclone shelter attached to the Jeshoreshwari Kali temple, and would also be used by the broader community of all faiths as a storm shelter and community facility.
यहाँ पर एक कम्युनिटी हॉल की आवश्यकता है। इतना ही नहीं, ये मल्टीपर्पज कम्युनिटी हॉल हो, ताकि जब काली पूजा के समय लोग यहाँ आए तो उनके भी लिए उपयोग में आए। यहाँ के लोगों के कोई सामाजिक, धार्मिक, शैक्षणिक अवसर हो तब भी उनके क्लान में आए। इस हेतु से भारत सरकार यहाँ पर इस निर्माण कार्यों को करेगी। मैं बांग्लादेश सरकार का भी आभार मानता हूँ कि उन्होंने इस कार्यक्रम के लिए, इस काम के लिए हमारे साथ शुभकामनाएं प्रकट की हैं।
There was great enthusiasm among the local devotees of Goddess Kali surrounding the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
We really needed this community hall. This will fulfill our several needs. We are really happy that he came to visit this temple. We are really proud that he came to visit this temple. It's a great moment for us. He interacted with us and asked us, when do we visit this temple? We said every year we pay visit to this temple.
Just as the beats of the dhak infuse energy into the atmosphere, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's darshan at the Jeshoreshwari Kali temple is another step towards reinforcing the people-to-people connect India and Bangladesh share. With Ashwini Mishra in Satkhira, Bureau Report, DD India.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also visited the Hari temple in Orakandi, and the temple holds special place for the Mathua community as the birthplace of their guru Hari Chand Thakur. Prime Minister met a delegation of local members of the community. Let's look at this report.
Hari Temple in Orakandi holds a special place for the Mathua community as the birthplace of their guru Hari Chand Thakur. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the temple and offered prayers there. Legend has it that Hari Chand Thakur appeared under a tree and shared his vision of a Thakur Bari with an idol of Lord Lakshmi Narayan with Guru Chand Thakur and his younger son. The duo then built this Thakur Bari at the exact location in keeping with the vision. Prime Minister Modi described his visit to Thakur Bari as fulfillment of one of his wishes. He said that he had been wanting to visit the place for many days.
किसने सोचा था कि भारत का प्रधानमंत्री कभी ओराकांदी आएगा? इस दिन की, इस पवित्र अवसर की प्रतीक्षा मुझे कई वर्षों से थी। साल 2015 में जब मैं प्रधानमंत्री के तौर पर पहली बार बांग्लादेश आया था, तभी मैंने यहां आने की इच्छा प्रकट की थी। वो मेरी इच्छा, वो मेरी कामना आज पूरी हुई है।
A social reformer who stood for equality for all, Hari Chand Thakur gave the lesson of spirituality along with a sense of responsibility towards society. He was also an advocate of education of girls. Inspired by his vision, the Prime Minister announced establishment of a primary school for girls and upgradation of a middle school. Prime Minister said that the schools are dedicated in the service of Guru Hari Chand.
अर्थात शोषित, पीड़ित, दलित, वंचित समाज ने जो कुछ भी चाहा, जो कुछ हासिल किया, वो श्री श्री हरिचांद जी जैसे कल्प वृक्ष का ही फल है.
Describing Guru Hari Chand as an epitome of peace, Prime Minister said that his vision serves as an inspiration for both India and Bangladesh as they tackle challenges of violence and terrorism.
भारत और बांग्लादेश दोनों ही देश अपने विकास को अपनी प्रगति से पूरे विश्व की प्रगति देखना चाहते हैं. दोनों ही देश दुनिया में अस्थिरता, आतंक और अशांति की जगह स्थिरता, प्रेम और शांति चाहते हैं.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met a delegation of local members of the Mathua community. BJP MP Shantanu Thakur was also part of the delegation.
We are very, very proud by the presence of you. The Mathua religion has just reached in the top level, and we are very, very happy. We are grateful to him. So he visited in this historical place.
Many members of the Mathua community in India hail from the scheduled caste Namoshudro community. They trace their origins to Orakandi in Bangladesh. Prime Minister Modi's visit to Orakandi further cements the people-to-people connect between India and Bangladesh. With Ajay Vikram in Orakandi, Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, let's turn to our guests once again. We talked a little earlier, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, about the substantive nature of this visit, but this is the meaningful part of it, one would think, isn't it? This is deeply meaningful, the way the Prime Minister interacted with the community members and also sent out a clear message, of support to the minority communities there.
Yes, I think the Prime Minister has a wonderful knack of doing things which has not occurred to previous leaders and previous governments. After all, there is a significant minority in Bangladesh, and we have sometimes supported them from here. But this whole idea that he should visit the place, visit the temple, meet with people there, is a completely different kind of symbolism and gesture, if you like. It's one thing to sit in Delhi and say we support minorities in Bangladesh. It is another to go to Bangladesh, to places which matter to the minorities there,
yes,
to be there yourself and try to build this community hall in that temple or in that area, if I understood the report right, where it could be of benefit to those people. That
yes,
is how you demonstrate solidarity. That is how you demonstrate that there is a connect between the people of India and the people of Bangladesh. So one has to really give full marks to the government and the Prime Minister on this gesture.
Indeed. And Ramesh, what sort of a message has this sent out, across Bangladesh? Bangladesh is really a secular state in that context because it respects all religious communities. But this is an important message when when the leader
right,
of a neighboring country comes and there is a lot of ceremony involved in his visits to profess his faith.
Indeed. Mark, I'll draw a comparison here. Since celebrations began here in Dhaka, the 10-day-long celebrations on 17th March, we've seen a number of leaders visit Dhaka, the President of Maldives, the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, the President of Nepal, the PM of Bhutan. But Prime Minister Modi is not only the first South Asian leader, but also the first world leader from
yes,
anywhere, any country, any government to actually travel outside of Dhaka, not only to places that house a sizable Hindu minority population, but also significantly, Mark, the first head of government from any country to actually visit the grave of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman at Tungipara, and he did that this afternoon.
yes.
Now, just to amplify the point Ambassador Kumar was making about minorities, PM Modi, when he visited
Yes,
Bangladesh in 2015, wanted to visit Shatkhira and Orakandi. He could not then, and like he said in that report, it was his dream come true
okay,
of sorts, that he actually visited those two places and visited the temples and interacted
right,
with the locals there this morning. Just to add a point there, he spoke about shared vision, shared challenges, shared opportunities. Both countries have since decided to spread the spirit of 1971
yes,
to more
the spirit
countries
of
around the world,
1971.
including at the UN, and also take the Bapu Bangabandhu digital exhibition to the UN as well, and 19 other countries.
Yes, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Ramesh Ramachandran, for joining us. But Ambassador Mohan Kumar, I'd like you to stay with us because we want to discuss with you, the situation in Myanmar. Moving on then to our next story. The subscribers base of DD Free Dish has crossed the 40 million mark, and it's not just that. It has become the second set-top box used within a home in the absence of large events on television in some cases. This is being said in this report.
Continuing its strong growth trajectory, DD Free Dish has crossed yet another milestone. Its base has crossed an estimated 40 million subscribers according to the EY Wiki Media Entertainment Report 2021. The growth has been attributed to less expensive television sets, economic issues, launch of the DD Retro channel, and return of big broadcasters to the Free Dish platform. DD Free Dish has also become a second set-top box within the home, used when there are no large events on television in some cases. Television households will continue to grow at over 5% till 2025, driven by connected TVs, which could cross 40 million by 2025, and DD Free Dish could cross 50 million. DD Free Dish is a multi-channel free-to-air direct-to-home service of Prasar Bharati. Primary objective of DD Free Dish is to provide an alternative and affordable platform for quality entertainment and information to people without any subscription fee. Presently, DD Free Dish hosts 161 TV channels, including 91 Doordarshan channels, comprising of 51 co-branded educational channels, 70 private channels and 48 radio channels. With effect from 1st April 2021, DD Free Dish private TV channel bouquet would comprise of 10 Hindi general entertainment channels, 15 Hindi movies, 6 music, 20 news, 8 Bhojpuri, 3 devotional and 2 foreign channels. DD Free Dish is presently under upgradation and is expected to add another few channels in its bouquet by May 2021. Recently, an online web app has also been released that aids consumers in finding DD Free Dish set-top box dealers based on their nearest location. The 2021 edition of the FICCI EY report on the Indian media and entertainment sector, released in March 2021, showcases the present and future growth scenario of every segment of media and entertainment like TV, radio, print, digital in the light of demand patterns shift, aided by the growth of digital infrastructure accompanied by accelerated digital media adoption. Bureau Report, DD India.
Moving on then to our next story. Well, the political unrest in Myanmar has led to the killing of at least 90 protesters after the military junta used the occasion of the Armed Forces Day to show undue power against dissent. The protesters have been protesting since the 1st of February, that military coup that took place on that day, that ousted the NLD government of the popular leader Aung San Suu Kyi. An EU delegation in Myanmar has termed this killing of unarmed civilians as indefensible. It was another bloody day in Myanmar. At least 90 protesters were killed by security forces on Myanmar's Armed Forces Day on Saturday in a brutal crackdown on dissent. According to local media and witnesses, deaths were reported from the central Sagaing region, Lashio in the east, in the Bago region near Yangon and elsewhere. Protesters against the February 1 military coup came out onto the streets of Yangon, Mandalay and Longlong town in Myanmar. CRPH, an anti-junta group set up by the deposed lawmakers, told an online forum that it's a day of shame for the armed forces. On the other hand, addressing an annual Army Day parade on Saturday, Myanmar's junta leader Min Aung Hlaing reiterated a promise to hold elections after last month's coup and said that violent acts were inappropriate. Myanmar's junta leader also said that the armed forces of Myanmar, Tatmadaw, practices a policy of diplomatic relations with not only neighboring countries and regional defense forces but also international defense forces.
In international relations, Tatmadaw is looking forward to regional stability with the defense forces of friendly nations, including ASEAN armies, and is putting an effort to enhance cooperation, exchange programs through exercises, mutual understandings.
European Union delegation to Myanmar in a tweet said, "The 76th Myanmar Armed Forces Day will stay engraved as a day of terror and dishonor. The killing of unarmed civilians, including children, are indefensible acts. The EU stands by the people of Myanmar and calls for an immediate end of violence and the restoration of democracy." On Friday, the ruling military junta had warned that pro-democracy protesters risked being shot in the head or back, as activists had called for a huge show of defiance against the generals on Armed Forces Day. Until Friday evening, activist group the Assistance Association of Political Prisoners counted at least 328 protesters who had been killed in the weeks of unrest. Protesters have taken to the streets almost daily since the coup that derailed Myanmar's slow transition to democracy. Bureau Report, DD India. So that brings us to our second In Focus discussion tonight, and this is it. Myanmar, Day of Shame and Dishonor. And Ambassador Mohan Kumar continues to be with us. Ambassador Mohan Kumar, what would have led the military junta to take such a step? It's clearly beyond what is expected.
So clearly, it seems to me that the military government is getting increasingly nervous about the protests spinning out of control. But having said that, this has got to be a matter of deep concern for India, whichever way you look at it.
Yes.
Obviously, we have to condemn the violence, but more importantly, it also puts India on the horns of a dilemma. We do have refugees and others coming in from Myanmar to Mizoram. And on the other hand, it has been our long-standing policy to deal with the government that is in power in Myanmar. Remember, before, in fact, I can share with your viewers that when I was Joint Secretary Myanmar in 2006, I accompanied President Abdul Kalam to Myanmar when there was the military power, which was actually, calling the shots in Myanmar. And at the time, we told them that while this is the form of government that is acceptable to Myanmaris, and we have nothing to say on that. We nevertheless would like to see the upholding of rule of law and a transition to democracy. That has been India's long-standing position. But I'm afraid the events of today do cause a certain amount of concern and puts our position in a dilemma, because we now have to take a good look at what's going on there, try to open channels of communication with the military and see how India can be of help. Hot statements or rough statements, strong statements don't help. What you really need to do, India, is, I mean, most people don't realize we have a huge Indian origin population in Myanmar, almost 2 million. And they're all Tamil speaking, who have, of course, integrated completely with Myanmar. We have a long border with Myanmar. The northeastern states like Mizoram have a long 500-kilometer border with Myanmar.
Right.
There are ethnic links between people of Mizoram and people of Myanmar. So the situation is much more complicated, frankly, than what looks on the surface.
Absolutely.
And India have to approach these events with concern, because there has been bloodshed. At the same time, we will have to be extremely cautious and careful how we talk to the authorities in Myanmar.
If one looks at a situation like this, is it really the leader who matters in the end? Because when we look at General Min Aung Hlaing, he seems to be in charge. If he is made to or persuaded by the international community to step aside, can one think that that will be a solution?
One has to go by the news coming out. There are different sources, different interpretations. My assessment was that he was nearing his retirement, and one of the reasons for the coup was perhaps he felt that the military should continue and he should continue. If that is the case, you will have to make an assessment about how much support the military strongman has within the military. And in the light of what has happened, there could also be the opinion turning against him within the country. That is why I think we will have to approach the situation with caution. We just don't know what the power politics in Myanmar is, and how much of support he has within the military, outside the military, what kind of international pressure that is going to be brought to bear on Myanmar. ASEAN has an important role as well. Myanmar belongs to ASEAN, and ASEAN, I know, doesn't have a complete consensus on the issue of Myanmar, but ASEAN's statements on the current bloodshed will be extremely important. They will be forced to say something. They can't keep quiet. So we will have to take these things into consideration before our position crystallizes vis-a-vis.
India will need to take a considered view. Thanks very much, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, for joining us for both these discussions and spending a lot of time with us today. Thank you very much, sir. Moving on then to our next story then, some updates now on the Dandi Yatra, which has a special significance in India's freedom struggle. Let's take a look at the reenactment of it.
Dandi March has a historic, symbolic significance in India's freedom struggle. Treading on the path of Mahatma Gandhi, during Dandi March, participants began their journey from Ankleshwar to reach Jasod. The participants in Dandi March were joined by a small but enthusiastic children who were dressed up in Mahatma Gandhi's attire. Kerala's Governor Arif Muhammad Khan joined this journey. On reaching Jasod, the governor said that the Dandi March, led by Mahatma Gandhi, had created an atmosphere in the country which shook the entire British Empire.
मेरी समझ से गांधी जी ने वो तरीके अपनाए जिसका आध्यात्मिक पहलू था और जिसमें नैतिक शक्ति, नैतिक बल, योगिक बल पैदा होता था, और दांडी यात्रा उसकी बेहतरीन मिसाल है.
Kerala governor further said Mahatma Gandhi inspired many to rise up against British and to fight for their rights.
राई जोरे खुदी से पर्वत आत्मविश्वास और आत्मबल जो है वो राई को, सरसों के दाने को पर्वत की ताकत दे देता है। और अगर पर्वत ज़ौफ़ कहते हैं कमजोरी, मतलब अभाव, तो पर्वत ज़ौफ़े खुदी, अगर आत्मबल का अभाव हो तो पर्वत जो है उसकी हैसियत राई के दाने के बराबर भी नहीं रह जाती।
Underlining the principle of non-violence, Arif Muhammad Khan further said that non-violence is the ultimate virtue and a weapon that can only be used by those who possess strength and humility. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, the big story of the day, the voting concluded for the first phase of assembly elections to the states of Assam and West Bengal, and 47 seats went to the polls in Assam, 30 in West Bengal. Both states saw a healthy voter turnout between 75% and 80%, and Assam has a 126-member assembly. Voting is taking place in 3 phases there. West Bengal has 294-member assembly, and it's spread over 8 phases, the voting there.
These are the visuals of polling of the first phase of assembly elections held in West Bengal and Assam. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, people's enthusiasm to cast their vote seems to be at peak. People participated in the festival of democracy with full enthusiasm. People from every section of society, including senior citizens and others, all queued up outside their respective polling booths to exercise their franchise. Let us begin with West Bengal. The state's 30 assembly seats went for polls on Saturday. Out of this, 7 seats are from East Medinipur, 6 from West Medinipur, 4 from Jhargram, 9 from Purulia and 4 seats from Bankura. Voters were keen to cast their vote that resulted in a huge voter turnout. Although there were reports of some minor incidents of violence, the overall polling process was by and large peaceful.
Percentage at 5 p.m. chilo 79.79% ache. So you can understand it will be high.
A total of 288 polling booths were set up for 30 assembly seats. The Election Commission had made elaborate arrangements to prevent the spread of COVID-19 at the polling stations. Women and youngsters were seen to be more enthusiastic. Let us now talk of Assam, where polling was held for a total of 47 seats in 12 districts of the state. The 12 districts which went to polls were Shonitpur, Vishwanath, Naugam, Golaghat, Jorhat, Majuli, Shivsagar, Charaidev, Lakhimpur, Dhemaji, Dibrugarh and Tinsukia. The Election Commission facilitated these polling stations with attractive selfie points, childcare room and separate room for COVID-19 positive patients. Various VVIPs also turned out to cast their vote in both states. BJP State President of West Bengal, Dilip Ghosh, voted at a polling booth in Jhargram. Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal cast his vote at a polling centre in Dibrugarh. Congress State President Ripun Bora exercised his franchise at Gopur. And Congress MP Gaurav Gogoi voted in Jorhat. Voting concluded peacefully both in Assam and West Bengal. After the high voter turnout in the first phase, all eyes are now on the next phases of the elections. It would be interesting to see whether the enthusiasm among the voters would remain the same or will it dwindle. With inputs from Yogesh Sheetal from Assam and Abhishek Alok and Anuj from West Bengal, Bureau Report, DD India.
The cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in the country has crossed 5.94 crore today. A total of 5,94,92,824 vaccine doses have been given out to people. A total of 13,83,051 vaccine doses were given till 8 p.m. on this is the 71st day of the COVID-19 vaccination nationwide. And Prime Minister of Bhutan has thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the delivery of vaccines. In a tweet, Prime Minister of Bhutan said, as we wrap up a successful day on the nationwide COVID-19 vaccination rollout, I would like to thank Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and his government for the timely support and delivery of the vaccine. You played a big role, a big part in making this possible. The Chinese and Iranian foreign ministers signed a 25-year cooperation agreement between the two allies. In a ceremony carried live on the state television, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met President Hassan Rouhani ahead of the signing of the agreement, which is expected to include Chinese investments in key sectors such as energy and infrastructure. The accord is an example of successful diplomacy. Rouhani's advisor, Ashina, was cited by the Iranian media as saying, "The country's strength is in its ability to join coalitions, not to remain isolated." China, one of Iran's largest trading partners and a long-standing ally, agreed in 2016 to boost bilateral trade by more than 10 times to $600 billion over a decade. Now, India will take on England in the third and final ODI on Sunday at the MCA Stadium in Pune. The series is tied at 1-1 after the visitors blazed their way to an emphatic win in the second game. England will look to continue with the momentum, while India will be looking to come back into the series.
Down 1-0, England made a thrilling comeback in the ODI series as they registered a crushing 6-wicket win over India. After conceding the game from an advantageous position, Virat Kohli and boys will now look to make amends when they take the field in the series-deciding third ODI on Sunday. While India did score a mammoth 336 for 6 in the second ODI, the total was built on a slow start, which saw the hosts scoring just 9 runs in the first 4 overs. It was KL Rahul's turn and Rishabh Pant's blistering 50 that helped Team India finish on a high. On the other hand, despite conceding 336 runs, there was no dent in England's confidence. The visitors in the first half of their chase replicated what they did in the first ODI, but ensured the English side did not collapse in a must-win game on Friday. For India, it was a forgettable bowling performance as Stokes sent both Kuldeep Yadav and Krunal Pandya on a leather hunt. While Kuldeep gave away 84 in his 10 overs, Krunal leaked runs at an economy of 12 in the second ODI. Since England had ticked all boxes, Team India might do some chopping and change going into the series decider, keeping in mind 2 things they need to focus on: a firing start with the bat and a good show with the ball in the power play. One thing the host must keep in mind is that for the first time in this tour, the winning momentum is with visitors ahead of the series decider. Sports Desk, DD India.
India's Vijayveer Sidhu and Tejaswani claimed the gold medal in the 25-meter rapid-fire pistol mixed team event of the ISSF World Cup on Saturday in an all-Indian gold medal match. They comfortably beat Gurpreet Singh and Ashok Abhindya Patil. They won 9-1 at the Dr. Karni Singh shooting range. That's all we have for you News Night tonight. Thanks for being with us. Namaskar.